All right, we are recording. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so we can look at your lab number 7. And you did a good job. We're just going to talk about some small things, even some things you did correctly that you didn't even need to do. I just wanted to talk about that too, again.
I did another one and turned it in this morning.
Yeah, that's the one we're going to look at.
Oh, okay.
Let's see. Okay. And can you see my screen?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. So here we go. We're looking at your lab here. Let me pull up. The first thing I want to talk about, where you kind of went above and beyond, and I've noticed you've done this for the few labs, but I wanted to talk about it just to make sure you understand and also any future students understand. So with the scientific process, with these labs, not all of them, but as many as I can, I want them to follow some form of the scientific process, which is where, you observe something, then that leads you to a question, and then you form a hypothesis, and then you test your hypothesis. But obviously in this case, in lab, usually it starts off with the question phase, right? Because I'm giving you questions to answer, as I did in lab 7.
Right.
And technically, all you are required to do as a 100 level non-biology major student is just come up with a hypothesis and then test your hypothesis. But in real life, people would kind of do what you did instead. So in real life, a real scientist would do what's called maybe a literature review. So if they're considering a question, then before they start doing experiments to test or before even coming up with hypotheses, they would look at what we already know. They do some literature research, look at the internet, look at peer-reviewed journals. And it seems like that's what you did here. And again,
I have my book open.
Yeah.
And I also check the internet and kind of compare as to what they have to say.
Yeah, that is great. So I wanted to first just commend you for that, because you didn't have to do that. But yeah, so, for any future students, feel free to do that, but you don't have to. And what you definitely don't want to do, and it seems like you did not do this, so I'm not saying you did, but what you definitely don't want to do is when you're answering the hypothesis questions, what you don't want to do is use whatever tool I've given you to answer the questions yet. And again, you didn't do that. This is more for the future students. Like, for example, for this lab 7, you go to this website right here to answer the questions, right? So before you go to that website, you need to answer the hypothesis questions. And again, I'm not saying you did that, but this is just more for the future students. So
I did go to that website too.
Oh, okay. Well, you're not going to lose points for that, but that's the point of a hypothesis. The idea of the hypothesis is you're just coming up with a question. I hate to use the word guess, but for the context of this conversation, or the purposes of this conversation, the word guess is fine. But yeah, you're supposed to take a guess at the answer before you look it up, because the whole purpose of the experiment is, all right, take your guess and then use the tools I've given you to see if your guess is correct. But again, you didn't lose points for that. So yeah. Any questions about that?
No.
Okay, good.
I just kind of put too much on there. I think you're saying, when I should have just said increased, decreased,
Oh, for your own sake, yes, you did. For your own sake, you did too much, but there's nothing wrong with that. Like I said, I think it's even better for you to, look into the answer before you write your hypothesis. Except, like I said, make sure, not that it matters for you, because you're or anybody watching this, because this is module 7, so there's only one left after this. But you want to make sure you don't use the tool I gave you yet, because the hypothesis, for the sake of this discussion, is just a guess, right? So you're not supposed to look it up yet. So just take a guess and then look it up, but that's okay. Anyway, that being said, let me take a look at what you have here. And another thing I like that you did that some other students do that you don't have to do, but I like it, is you, in this lab and other labs, when you write your hypothesis, you also justify it. Because like you said, you could have just put increase, decrease, stayed the same, but you justified your answer. And again, you don't have to, but I like it. I mean, some of the labs do ask you, say, hey, what is your hypothesis and why? But in this case, it doesn't. So anyway, good job on that. Do you have any questions about the hypothesis section before we move forward?
No. I kind of understand it now. Kind of late, but
that's okay. It's okay. Okay, so then again, for the sake of the future students, you'll write down your hypotheses. Then you go to this website to test your hypotheses. I wish I had that pulled up. Let me try something. Excuse me. If you don't mind, I'm going to try to pull up I made a new version of it, and I want to pull it up. Bear with me, please. Okay, that module 7. Well, there we go. Okay. I thought I had this pulled up, so I apologize for that wait. So at this point, you probably cannot see my screen, correct?
I can see you.
This is weird. Huh, okay. Oh, I see. Yeah, all right. Let me put my screen back.
I mean, it's a picture of you. It's not you.
Right. Yeah, I got you. Okay, so there's my screen again. Now, and I know you've already done this, so I'm sorry. You had to bear with me. And this is why I offer extra credit for people who allow me to record it. Because then when I go through the feedback, I also tell you stuff you already know, because this is also for the sake of your future students, or the future students to come. So anyway, there's here's the link, as you already know, because you did it, but I'm going to copy the hyperlink. I'm going to go over to this. I'm going to open this, paste this, open it up. Now, this is just the way you need it. Now, I've adjusted it, Lana, so this is actually a little bit different than when you opened it, because it's the same website, but if I were to change this right here, that also changes technically the link. So what you really needed, and no one lost points for this, but what you really needed was the last 3 years, which was 2020 to 2023, and yours didn't have that. It could have been done. You could have done that, but again, I didn't include it into the instructions, so no one lost points for that.
Well, I didn't figure we had anything for 23.
Oh, yeah, you didn't figure.
Complete information for 22.
Yeah,
that's why I chose 21, 20, and 19.
No, it makes sense, but yeah, this is that they have this. That's a whole different discussion. But I don't want to complicate it. It's a 100 level course, so I just left it as it was. And for anybody else, when they click it, it'll bring them to this, and they will have the last 3 years. Anyway, that's where you're going to get your information from, as you already know. They have all kinds of stuff, including non-renewable energy. But here we go. Here's the renewable energy. So this is the information basically that you're going to use to fill out the table. So let's go back to the table. All right. And I'll point out one of the things that you did and corrected. Not that it was necessarily wrong. I mean, I guess technically it was wrong, but you had 2021, 2020, and then 2019 and the percent change.
Worked it backwards.
Yeah, which really, if this wasn't a lab assignment and it was just literally you doing an experiment, you can do your table however you want. And this goes for all the students, but because it's a lab assignment and because it does say, I'll show you. There we go. Third most recent year, second most recent year, most recent year. Because it does say that, anybody making that mistake would lose points. And speaking of which, you might want to go back and make some changes yet again to your table, because you flopped them around, as you should have. You fixed that. Now your signs are incorrect, because we went from 15.74 to 15.03. And if those are the correct numbers, that means you've gone down, which means that should be a negative. Likewise, 259 to 286 is up, which means that should be a positive. Does that make sense?
Right. I got them all backwards because of switching them.
Exactly. Yeah. So the reasoning, actually, you know what? Don't even fix it. That's it, because I understand why. And you're talking to me and we're going through this together. So you don't need to go through that as long as you understand it.
Yes, I do.
And then, and another thing, and it looks like you fixed this too. And again, so I'm just repeating myself for the sake of anybody else who's going to watch this video. Another thing I like to look at, and I'll be honest, is I don't always check the math. I don't always break out a calculator and look to see if these are correct. What I use is something called Locology. And for example, I don't remember which one, but you had one of them that was close. Maybe it was this one. It was close to 100% change.
Right. It was 96.30 or something.
Yeah. That's right. And I was looking at these numbers, and I was just looking at, well, if we went from 259 and there was a close to 100% change, or let's call that 260, then that means it should be, either close to zero if it was negative, or close to 520, right? And it's not.
Right.
So because of that, I could just tell right off the bat that the math was wrong. So that's just something to consider for any future students, or even you moving forward to other classes. If you don't have the time to double check all your math, just give it a look-see and see if something just jumps out and says that's
I
wrong.
think I just looked at it wrong and
Yeah.
didn't see the decimal.
Yeah, common mistake to make. It's especially when it's not a math class, and people pay a little bit less attention to it. But that's something to keep in mind. And more importantly, beyond classes and beyond getting your degree, that's important in real life. When people present you with data, like, hey, you should vote for this person, and then they give you some data and show you why, or you should support this, and they give you some data, and then you should, show you why. And you should look at that data and give it the look-see and see, does anything jump off as wrong? Because sometimes it does. But anyway, this is good then. Like I said, your signs are wrong, but you don't need to fix it because we've talked about it and you understand why. So do you have any questions about this table?
Now, had I used 21, 22, 23, these numbers must have changed drastically, because most of these were increased in the last 3 years, with the exception of just a couple little decreases. And if I had to change all of these to minuses, there's a whole lot of decreases.
Right. Well, yeah.
All of my stuff would have been wrong had I put the right plus.
Right.
I do see. I just didn't think I should do 22, 23 because they're not here yet. But
yeah, that is okay. But yeah, you can see, hydropower's gone up, wind has gone up, solar has gone up, biomass has gone down a little bit, and geothermal has gone down a little bit.
Right.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah. So no questions about that. I will point out, I guess, for the future students, that for extra credit, and this, I didn't mention this on this one, this is a new thing. For extra credit, you can put extra years. So I'm only requiring the most 3 recent years, but if you want, you can go back 4 years or 5 years, however long you want, and add more to it. And if you also, another thing you can do, as you can see here, I'm only asking you to look at the renewable energy. If you want to, you can add another category and put in non-renewable energy. So natural gas, coal, nuclear, all this stuff. You can see it right there. Anyway, so you said there was no questions on that, so we'll move forward. You did great on this. After you've done basically, this means you've done the experiment, right? You collected data, and then after you do an experiment in the real scientific process, you analyze your data, and that's basically what this is. Was your hypothesis correct? And what happened? Did it increase? Did it decrease? And you did great. A lot of people miss this because this is a 2-part question, and they sometimes only do 1 part. So they'll say correct or incorrect and leave it at that. Or they'll say it decreased and leave it at that. But it is a 2-part question, and you did good on that. Excuse me. Yep, those were all good. Well, let's see. Of course, here, actually, it's funny I should mention that because you did mess this one up. But again, you don't need to go back and correct it because we're talking about it. But the last 2, you did it right for all the other ones, but for the last 2, you didn't say whether your hypothesis was correct or incorrect. And here's one people mess up a lot, and it's not that big of a deal in the grand scheme of things, but this part right here, it's asking you a question like, why do you think the renewable energy? Why do you think the renewable energy source that saw the largest increase saw such an increase? You can guess or look it up, but indicate which. And then, so for yours, you got the first half right? You said why you think that is the case, but you could, at the end, you need to either put this is a guess or I got this information from, whatever website. And a lot of people miss points for that. Any questions about that?
No, I think I got that from, just listening and people's discussions.
Yeah.
Talking about it and what have you. So,
yeah.
Because I read their discussions.
Perfect.
Or I try to read them all, and then answer the ones that try to get something different.
Yeah.
If I answered this solar, then I'll try to answer that coal or whatever.
Yeah, it's perfect. In the perfect world, I would wish everybody would do that, and I would actually even put that in the instructions. But my instructions are already so lengthy. I don't like to add more to it. But yeah, so this would have been more correct had you said, I am guessing based on the discussions that I read and then what you wrote. So again, other people would lose points for that because you need to answer it and then indicate whether you were guessing or include a source. And then this one you messed up too, because this is basically the same question as the last one, except instead of talking about the energy source that increased, it's talking about the one that decreased. So again, the answer should still been the same though. Like, why do you think? Like, you put conventional hydropower had the largest decrease, but the question is why? Do you have
I
any?
did. Yeah. Okay.
But you go
You
ahead
know
and answer
what?
that
I
now if you
didn't
want.
finish that because I didn't know.
No,
And I
that's
looked
okay.
it up and I couldn't figure out why that it went down.
That's okay. I mean, you really could just, like I said, you could just guess, take a shot in the dark. Just think about why anything might go down, and because it doesn't matter if you're right or not. The idea, the point of these questions is just to get you thinking about it. Whether you're right or not doesn't matter. So, any guess as to why you think it might have decreased?
Just people stopped using it, I guess.
That's a good guess. Yeah, and I'd have to look it up to be sure too. But if I'm guessing, I would maybe guess because it's so expensive to build them. Like, it's not expensive to maintain them, but it's
Yeah, I
expensive
read
to
that
build
too.
them. Yeah, so maybe it's like, yeah, and also maybe we've already dammed all the good rivers that are good to be dammed. I don't know. I could look it up. But anyway, so yeah, you would have lost a point for that if that were the case, or any future student. Um, And then, yeah, this is good too. If the overall consumption of renewable energy is increased, do you think it was because Americans are using more renewable energy as opposed to non renewable energy? Or do you think it's because we are using more energy overall? So, to reword that, are we saying that, of course, we're using more renewable energy because we're using more energy overall? Or do you think it's because we're shifting from using non renewable energy to renewable energy, or is it a mixture of both? That's basically what it's asking. And you put renewable. So yeah, seems like you're saying that perhaps, well, you think it's increased because people are doing it on purpose because they want to do the right thing. So
Right.
yeah, so that's that. And then I don't remember what your original because this is the second one you turned in. I don't remember about the original, but I point out that here that and then a lot of people make this mistake too, but you don't have a graph.
Well, I do have one.
Okay. It's just not on this one.
Right. But you had it X'd. So I thought I had increase or decrease and renewable energy on the wrong side. So I redid it. Can you see it?
I can't see it on here. You can just
But I
email
mean,
it.
see it. Can you see me?
Oh, let me go back. I cannot. Yours is kind of like a dark screen.
Well, I'll go ahead and send this through.
Okay.
I didn't have any way of adding it to this. I just have to make it in addition. And then all I can do is really email it. But I did correct it if
Perfect.
that's what you wanted. I
Yeah.
couldn't tell because I had increase or decrease over here where the numbers are. And I had renewable energies down here where the names of them are.
Okay.
But I thought I got it backwards.
Let me
I
see here.
usually do. But I'll
Yeah.
go ahead and send it to you.
Okay.
And
And to try to verbally explain it, just in case you didn't do it right, or again, for the sake of anybody else watching this video,
right.
if you're choosing a bar graph, on your x-axis on the bottom, going horizontal like this should be each category, like wind, solar, uh,
Right.
hydro, blah blah blah, and then
I
up
have
here,
that on the
and
bottom.
yep, and then up here on the vertical, the y-axis, it should be, well, I'll talk about it one, like percent change. So 0% change, positive 10% change, positive 20, positive 30, whatever, or down, negative
Right.
5, so on and so forth. So that way, I really wish I could show it. This is horrible, but your bar, for solar, your bar would go up, right? Or for
Right.
hydro,
I did. It's up to close to
perfect,
60 I have.
perfect. Yeah, so
And
that's
then the hydropower would be the wrong one because I had it at minus 96 and it should have been minus 9.63. So it's too much purple.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So that way, yeah, you would lose points for that. And the most common mistakes I see of what I just described here is making sure that the x-axis and the y-axis are correct. So your bars should be going up and down. And a lot of times people have the bars going left and right.
They're going up and down.
Perfect.
Yes.
Yeah. So, and that's the most common mistake. And another common mistake is people leave off a title. Like you have to give your graph a title and also make sure your axes are titled, right? So if you have the percentages, it should say percent change. And that's it. I think those are the most common mistakes. Yeah. So any other questions overall?
No. It looks like maybe some places I did too much and other places I didn't do enough.
Right.
But I will resend this to you.
Okay.
So that'll help. And I'm still trying to do some other things. I'm going to retake that test 3 today, probably.
Awesome.
It takes me a little while. I use these little funny glasses for the computer, and I use a different pair for reading. So I have to kind of take them off and on and off and on while I'm doing a test.
Oh, what a
So
pain.
that's one reason timed doesn't work for me real well either. But I don't like to complain, so I just go on with it best I can. I'm glad we get an opportunity to do it a second time.
And I'm glad you mentioned that because I want to bring this up, even though it has nothing. This isn't about Module 7. This is about the entire course. The reason that the exams are timed is because you're not supposed to look anything up.
Right.
The exams are supposed to be closed book. And in this case, in your case, you should only need one pair of glasses because you're not supposed to look anything up. This is supposed to be what you remember.
Well, that's what I do the second time. It took me 3 hours to do exam 2.
Well, I admire your tenacity. That's great. And hopefully it helps you learn because, you know, the reason I even do this is because my cell biology professor did it when I was an undergrad. And, you know, she let us retake the exams, like take it home and, you know, turn it in basically as a homework assignment. I really learned a lot when I had, you know, you remember the questions that you missed and that you had to go look up and spend so much time trying to find the answer. So I learned a lot from it, and I'm hoping everybody else does too, and that it helps their grade.
I can rely on the book and the internet and not my brain.
Yeah, it can be tough. Well, all right then. Did you have any other questions?
I don't guess. I appreciate the time to do this. Took a bit to get it together, but
yeah, it can be tough. But I'm glad we were able to do it, and I really appreciate you letting me record it so I could share it with future students.
That's fine. Thank you.
You're welcome. Have a great weekend.
And you too. Bye-bye.
Bye.